Yo, what is up? You have found We Like the Blazers. I am Brandon Goldner, and with me, as always, it is Ryan Whitledge wearing the hoodie with the absolutely ginormous pinwheel on it. Ryan, what's up, man?
Not much. If you hear any weird noises behind me, I'm literally sitting about 2.5 feet away from my air conditioner, and I love you all, and I want to give you good audio, but Brandon has already told me that nothing will make me sound better, so I don't care. You get to hear an awkward hum every 10 minutes now.
Your entire life is an awkward hum. Also with us, we have Ashtyn Butuso of Flagrant Magazine and the Flagrant Podcast. Ashtyn, what's up?
Hi. Not a whole lot. Just kind of still unpacking my apartment on this lovely New York Saturday morning/afternoon, I guess, here. Unpacking stinks, but we're making our way through it.
I've been in this apartment for 5.5 years. There are two closets where if you go in, there are still boxes that have yet to be unpacked.
Oh, God. We don't really have that luxury here, so it's like, if you're not going to use it, you just get rid of it, and we have so much of that, and it's a bummer. Just a lot of getting rid of stuff.
What's the apartment space like out there? Did you get a closet? A closet with a section?
Mm-hmm. We got a 2-bedroom because we both have to be working from home, which is brutal. But at least it's a 2-bedroom. It's a very limited closet space, so it's very different from our apartment in Portland, which was pretty spacious and had an extra bathroom and had all the closets you could need and all this stuff. And so it's a lot of, we brought everything basically. We got rid of some stuff, but we brought most of our stuff. And now we're why did we do that? We did not need all this stuff. So we're drowning.
So what inspired the move, or what inspired / brought the move cross country? Which one of your guys' jobs was to blame for that?
I am sort of to blame for it because I've wanted to move here for so many years, and we've talked about it for a long time, and we thought maybe we'd do it in a few years, but my husband was reached out to by a company, and they were we kind of want you to work here, blah, blah, blah. He went through the whole interview process, and then he was like, could I live in New York? And they were like, actually, yeah, we have an East Coast territory. So we were like, I guess we're moving to New York, and I can keep my same gig, and Flagrant will probably, benefit from having 2 bodies here instead of just one. So, yeah, a lot of factors.
Nice.
That's pretty amazing. I have been watching in awe the work that you're all doing at Flagrant and just how much it's been picked up by people. How has it been to be able to create something and just watch it kind of flourish and bubble out? And now you're seeing people on the national stage are referencing it and telling people to buy it.
Rachel Nichols.
Yeah, that has to be amazing. How does that feel?
It's really crazy. And the thing about us, which is something we're kind of trying to work on, is that we don't really let ourselves celebrate that much, and we kind of just keep our heads down and keep going. And we oftentimes have to remind each other that what we're doing is very cool, and we're getting exciting press and everything's exciting, and we kind of just forget that because we're oh yeah, we're doing this thing and we're so busy. But we try to remind ourselves, we try to send each other those photos over and over again and just kind of be can you guys believe this is happening? And it's hard to remind ourselves. I think also our significant others remind us because they're that's so cool, and it's easier for them to see it than for us because we're just in it all day. But so we're thankful that our significant others and our friends
enjoying the product.
Yes, exactly. But it's been really fun, and I hope we keep on keeping on and just keep growing.
One of the things I know that I've liked along the way of seeing Flagrant Mag grow is I don't know if this is necessarily the best descriptive term, but it's what I'm going to roll with, of that you guys have always seemed to maintain some level of the self-depreciating humor along the way
Yeah,
of like,
yep.
you know, and it kind of ties into what you were saying of like not getting too caught up on the success of it or whatnot, but just kind of still staying humble. The personality of all individuals involved comes through in all the work you put out there, whether it be the magazines or especially social interactions and all that stuff. One quick caveat, I would like to raise my hand. I am the one that started the trend on Blazer Tag of every time there's a flagrant foul
Yes.
of saying, was that a flagrant, and tagging you
Yes.
guys. And so I'm glad that took off. So that is my one like tiny iota of a contribution.
Well, that's a huge contribution because that's one of our favorite things that people tag us whenever there's a flagrant foul.
I wanted that one on Jokic back when Denver was still playing or whatnot. I wasn't even watching the game or whatnot, and then I remember seeing on the Flagrant Mag social it be like, hey, nobody's gonna tag us, and I just popped in. I'm like, sorry, I wasn't watching, and whoever was running it that night was like, we were worried because you're consistent.
Yes, yeah, we fully appreciate that. We try to maintain that sort of voice that feels true to ourselves because it's so easy for brands to be like so brandy on Twitter and on social pages, and that's not really our jam. So we kind of just try to be ourselves on there, and I'm glad it resonates with some people.
One quick question I have, because on a very, 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 very smaller scale or whatnot, do you guys have just one person that runs your social, or do you guys kind of all access it and hop on whenever you so see fit or whatnot?
We have a social manager, Sierra, but sometimes we'll hop on the ones and twos and just kind of fire a tweet off. But yeah, most of it is Sierra, the work of Sierra, and I follow her at, actually, I don't know. I can never remember her at because it's like
at Sierra Mountains, right?
At Sierra Mountains. But I feel like there's an underscore. Is there not?
Is there? There probably is.
I hate the random underscores. It throws everything off.
I know. I have one in mind. Actually, we talked about that on the podcast one time because apparently it like means you're broke if you have an underscore, and I was like, yes,
Looks
that's
like it's
Sierra
actually
Mountains.
just. Yep.
Yep.
So I've always found that interesting because over on my other podcast, on the Blazer Tag podcast, and to some degree with both me and Brandon having access to the Blazers Twitter handle, it's always weird because like if you're the one running it and like 99.7% of the tweets that come from Blazer Tag or whatnot are me, but it's always I always find it so hard that you have to remember that you're speaking for an entire group.
Yeah.
Because I'm a member of a 3-person. So it's like there are opinions and thoughts and things that I want to fire off like during games or during stuff that comes up in off season and whatnot where I'm like, hey, so this is, but do the other guys that are associated with this are no, that's not their thought, that's not their feeling, and you have to hold it back. I've always found that to be a very weird aspect of like the social interactions for things like, you know, Flagrant Mag, or like I said, on a very minuscule scale comparatively, Blazer Tag, or we like the Blazers.
Yeah, I think that the sort of like benefit that we have from that is like, I think when you're more specifically tied to a team, you like, you know, feel the need to comment on certain things and kind of take on different things. And then you might all have a spectrum of opinions, right? But for us, it's sort of like, we don't really have to, you know, like we're not going to see Flagrant like tweeting about Chauncey probably. Although we probably do all have the same opinion on that. All the Flagrant members probably have the same opinion on that. But, you know, I think like, when you're dissecting like the inner workings of a team constantly, it's like there's going to be like more varied personalities and opinions going into all of that, and that's definitely a challenge. But I don't think we face that probably as much as you guys do.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the production part of actually making a print magazine, because, I mean, we talked about it earlier. It's like your significant others can maybe have energy for pumping you up about it because they're not in it doing the work. When you think about creating a magazine, you have the layout and the art. You got to get it formatted. You have writing, and you have the whole process of laying stuff out. And I know I used to work at a quarterly magazine. It was like a weird little thing in Corvallis, like a financial literacy magazine for teenagers, which is just kind of a weird concept. But I remember like writing a story, and they wanted to cut one of the paragraphs out, but that meant it had to go back to the layout people. They had to change all the art and like it was a huge pain in the ass. Like,
yeah.
How much time does it really take? Like, can you help us understand how much time it does take to actually lay one of those things out? Because I imagine it's got to be a ton of work.
Oh man, the layout process takes months. Yeah, we're on our third issue now where we feel like we're getting into the swing of things in terms of like how processes should go, because it's also somewhat of like a challenge to be creating art and writing the articles at the same time, because like you said, when the article changes, everything has to change based on that. But the articles take longer than the art typically. So it's like you want to get a head start and get the art done, but like the articles aren't done. And then it's just like a whole thing. So that part takes months. That's probably the bulk of it, to be honest.
Do you guys have set, timeline goals for when you release? I know there was kind of that big gap between the, your first volume and the second volume. Do you guys kind of set a timeline of like, hey, do we want to do this like one issue a quarter, or is it just kind of like, all right, well, this is done now. I think this can't get any better, so we'll just send this out?
We went into it with the hope to be biannual, because we figured quarterly was like just too much for us, since we all have real jobs. I call them real jobs, and Bethany, our creative director, always gets mad at me when I say real jobs. But we kind of realized like, that's not that realistic for us. So when the pandemic hit, that like really slowed down that process. But that one was supposed to be like, around 6 months or so to finish, and it was much slower. This next issue will be a much quicker turnaround than what we typically do. And we're excited about that. We're excited to be moving steadily along, and we're thinking that this one will be out in September. So it's nice. Hopefully a little bit sooner than usual. Yeah.
That's awesome. I highly encourage people to check out your magazine and the podcast. If you go to flagrantmag.com, you can check out both of those there, and check out the podcast in any pod feeder podcast app. What are we calling it nowadays? I don't know. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find it there.
Podcatcher or whatnot.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Podcatcher. That's.
I never realized until this last year of where I had to switch hosting companies exactly how many different like podcast catching services there are. I don't know. I use two. I'm an Android guy, so it's like I have Google Podcasts and Spotify. If I can't find it on one, I can find it on the other. But there's like, I think I'm still waiting on like 15 different like applications to like Pocket Cast or whatever the hell they're all freaking called.
Box.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a big push to get people on Apple Podcasts, and it's kind of annoying because like I used to have an iPhone and now I don't, so I have an Android device. It's like I can't use that. So
welcome to the dark side, my friend.
Yeah, we've looked into the analytics of our pod, and most people are listening on app, like staggering number on Apple, not as much on Spotify, which we've found interesting. Because I listen to podcasts on Spotify, but
I have a weird behind the curtain question. So which hosting service does everybody here use? Blazer Tag? I use Transistor.
I use Red Circle.
Yeah, we use Red Circle too.
Okay, I may need to switch over to that, because according to Transistor, in 4 years I have 5 subscribers and 7 downloads.
Sounds about right. No, I mean, I'm not trying to do an advertisement.
I don't buy those numbers one bit. I download more, and I force my wife to download. I guarantee we get more than that.
I'm not trying to do an advertisement for Red Circle, but for a service that is free, they also have had really responsive customer service. Like the times that I've needed them.
Wait. Red Circle's free?
Yeah. Like when I needed to change the
name.
Why
the hell am I paying $35 a month?
What are you doing,
I know,
man?
isn't that crazy?
Seriously. When I wanted to change the name, from I Like the Blazers to We Like the Blazers because you joined, Ryan, it messes with the whole RSS feed and all this stuff. And they were able to help me within like a day or two. And I'm just like, I'm not even paying you. Like, we're only getting a couple hundred downloads. Like, we're probably not making you a ton of money. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, shout out to Red Circle.
Totally adding this to the good, because if I can tell my wife, hey honey, I can podcast and I saved $35 a month, she may not yell at me as much for doing it.
There you go.
So, I guess now I had this whole show plan laid out and whatnot, and then some news broke last night that we honestly, before the pod, debated on how we wanted to approach it, if we even wanted to kind of talk about it, if we even wanted to podcast and kind of put our opinions to recorded audio. So this is my awkward pivot into that the Trailblazers are finalizing their deal and agreement to hire Chauncey Billups. A lot of people have said, like, okay, well, why didn't they just announce the coaching hire? Well, it's simple. His team is still in the playoffs. I don't think a deal can be finalized until the off season starts for the Clippers. But as it stands, right,
could, but I think it would be awkward.
It's
anyway,
awkward.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
But it is what it is, and it came out. The news dump Friday night in the middle of a playoff game that the Trailblazers are going to be moving forward with hiring Chauncey Billups. And I don't want to start this off. There was a podcast 2 weeks ago where I did mention that I was kind of on the pro Billups side of things and my view. So I'm going to open the floor up to you guys to kind of start this conversation off and how you feel and what you've seen so far in fan reactions, both quote unquote locally and nationally.
Let's so first of all, as I was saying before we recorded, if I maybe stumble and go during this conversation, then apologies in advance. It's a complex issue. I have been trying to listen to people about this, talking with some people about it in person and in DM, and so my opinions on it are I'm trying to keep taking in information from people. So if I stumble with it, that's my bad. Sorry about that. I did want to ask, Ashtyn, you'd mentioned earlier when you were talking about kind of the brand of Flagrant's Twitter account, that you all had the same feeling about this coaching hire and this decision, and maybe just wanted to kick it to you. Like, what is your opinion about this, and kind of what's the collective thought? And not that you're speaking on behalf of your colleagues, but what's the collective opinion of y'all over at Flagrant about this?
Yeah, it sucks. I didn't even know about these allegations until maybe it was like a month ago when his name was first floated. Mm-hmm. And
I think that goes for most people in the Portland fan base. So
right, and I was mad about Jason Kidd, and I made a big stink about Jason Kidd on Twitter, and that was intentional, and I wanted to make a big stink about Jason Kidd, and then people kind of like opened my eyes to the Chauncey stuff, and that was also horrifying to learn about. And it's hard because women give so much to sports fandom and so much to their teams, and it feels like that doesn't matter. It feels like nobody cares, nobody listens. So it's really horrifying to me. And I understand that he wasn't charged, and I understand it was settled out of court, and I understand that it was in 1997. And none of those things are of any consequence, in my opinion. That doesn't change the way that I feel, because it just means a woman has been out there suffering since 1997. It doesn't mean anything that, I believe in redemption. I believe people can change. I believe you should not be defined by your mistakes. I absolutely believe that. I also believe there has been nothing done publicly to show on Chauncey's behalf that he has earned redemption or is remorseful or has sought out any kind of help, or I don't think he's put in any work publicly, and that's what really gets to me, because I was DMing with someone earlier today about Kobe, and they said, what's the difference between this and Kobe? You guys all forgave Kobe, which I didn't forgive Kobe, but I understand what they're saying, because I feel like Kobe did so much after it had happened to try and kind of make things right as much as he could, and I'm not canonizing Kobe by any means, but his apology was very public. He basically said, yes, I did it, and I'm sorry, just didn't know I was doing it, or whatever the thing, I don't remember the exact quote, but like, there's been none of that on behalf of Chauncey's team or anything, or, he hasn't done anything like that. And it's like, when you're in the public eye and this happens publicly, you owe it to people to talk about it publicly then.
Real quick on that front, do you think that that's more because, I mean, especially at the time, I think he was a rookie in 97. Do you think that, like, when this happened with Kobe, people were questioning Kobe about it? He was kind of forced, for lack of a better term, to come out in the media and address it. And do you think that maybe Chauncey's silence on the matter was just that he was never asked, or the type of, high profile figure per se, to where he felt like he needed to come out?
I don't know if that matters.
And talk about. It's a curiosity of mine. In all honesty, I mean, I just spitballing here.
Sorry. Yeah.
I would, if I did something horrific like that, I would be probably mortified for the rest of my life, and I would intentionally feel so fucking horrible sorry for cursing.
Let him fly. We'll hit that explicit button. Don't worry.
Yeah. That I would feel like I had to say something. I would feel like I had to do so much to make up for what I had done. And I think it's a red flag that someone doesn't. Even just once. Yeah. Okay, you don't have to swear up and down for the rest of your life that you're sorry for it. But one time. Do it one time,
And in that regard, I guarantee that all of this is going to come up in the introductory press conference and all that. And Jason Quick just did a mailbag edition on The Athletic a couple days ago, in which he actually asked O'Shea about it, and O'Shea was just like, oh, well, we're not talking about proposed candidates, blah, blah, blah. Just completely like kick the can down the road. Well, if you are hiring Billups, you can no longer kick that can down the road.
Can I get in here, Ryan?
Hold on real quick. For me, I view that the team's response and Billups' response, like in this case, you cannot just say, well, that was 20 years ago, I don't feel as though I need to rehash the past. Like, that is like the death nail for absolutely anything dealing with this. But is there anything that the organization could say, or that Billups could say when asked about this, that, for lack of a better term, just kind of makes you feel a bit better about the hire?
No, not me. I don't think they will address it personally. I think Neil O'Shea will do what he does, and he will say that was 20 years ago. I really do think that will happen, especially now that we've seen that posture and pretend to consider Becky Hammon all the while we knew they were going to hire Chauncey Billups the whole time. So I'm not putting anything past anyone, and I see a world where we don't discuss it. And yeah, I my hopes are sort of dashed. But Brandon, what do you think?
Sorry. No, something, Ashtyn, you said a little bit earlier about how the victims of abuse carry that with them forever, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's important that when people think about trauma, when something traumatic has happened, that affects you forever. And it can come up for you at unexpected times. There are certainly ways you can process it and deal with it, and maybe have it not hurt as much or affect you as much, but you carry that with you forever. And so I'm really I get angry when I see people who pull the it happened 20 years ago thing, because, to your point, the experience of that woman that will follow her forever. It impacts herself, the people around her, and that, I think, is really, really important to lift up and to center.
Totally.
And the other point you made too, and this is something I was messaging with somebody about yesterday, about reconciliation and atonement. And how our criminal punishment system it's not really set up for that. It's not really set up. There's whole legal theories around don't apologize to people when you do something wrong.
It's like a form of admitting guilt, basically. And
right. And how incredibly unhealthy that is, not only for the person who is affected, but frankly for the offender, that prevents them from fully coming to terms with whatever it is that they've done. So I have no sage insight about that. I just wanted to say those things. So that's
Yeah, it's that's an interesting point. Of course it's normal to not trust our legal system to any extent, and I think probably all of us understand that. And so I think that's like a big part of it too, is like sometimes it does matter that someone wasn't sentenced. I feel like in this seems like such a credible allegation. There's so many people that she talked to right after, and physical damage to several parts of her body due to penetration. Like, I mean, it's not only, to be like quite frank, most women I know have been in dicey situations where men have crossed a line. And that's, I'm not exaggerating. It's most women have been in that situation, right? Not necessarily rape, but this was like a violent act, like, you know, whereas something, and I'm not excusing the things that Kobe or any other abusers have done, but like Kobe, there weren't signs of like a struggle and damage. And I don't think it, you know, I might be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure. This is like violent behavior, and that's like extra troubling, because it's like I could easily like get over the fact that a man didn't quite get consent or was weird about things, and you know, if he's sorry about that, whatever, like that's happened so many times with so many people I know, and there is an argument to be had for redemption in those cases. But this is just like so much more intense than that too. It's like this is like what they show on TV, right? Like this is like how they depict rape on TV, and that's like it's just brutal. So anyways,
I made the mistake of chiming in on a Twitter thread last night in saying that I still find myself in the I am okay with this hire camp. And Twitter needs more characters, because I probably should have typed out, 3.5 chapters worth of a book to try to explain my reasoning behind it. After a while, I just kind of ventured away from the thread because I was getting roasted. One of the things that like I had put in there is, like I'm an only child of a single mom. I've seen abuse done to her throughout her life when she was still alive. I've seen that kind of stuff. When this all first came up, the Billups and kids stuff, I was talking to my wife about it. She's a very hardcore sports fan, so she's in the know on a lot of this stuff. And we kind of sat down and talked for a couple hours. And I just randomly threw out the statement of like, I talked to my wife about it, and then I got all the backlash of, well, your wife is obviously wrong. Your wife is obviously an idiot. And I'm like, wait. So while we're sitting here trying to defend and talk about that, this honoring of women and whatnot, you're taking this time to then put another one down. That one just got lost on me completely. I don't know. For me, it's like, I mean, if I want to get personal here, like me myself, I have been sexually assaulted and sexually abused at a previous time in my life. And so I will at least say, like, I do understand that I'm a man talking about this situation, but in that regard, like, I'm not oblivious to how this makes a victim feel. And that's just kind of when I give my opinions. And if you listened back to that episode of a couple weeks ago, I am speaking from that place of understanding. I'm not saying that I'm trying to convince anyone to have my opinion or be okay or whatnot. Everyone's allowed to have their own take. If you don't want to be a fan of this team anymore, that is well within your right. If you want refund on season tickets, that is well within your right. The thing that I don't necessarily like coming out of this is now everyone is attacking each other about this kind of stuff.
And I think that is I mean, that's, in my view, a reflection of a bunch of people trying to struggle through something that is complicated and very, very important. And Ryan, just so, like, I may not agree with you on everything or on this, but I know that you're a thoughtful person. I know that you think about this kind of stuff, as I think all three of us do. And when we're thinking about this specifically, to me anyway, it's a bunch of different stuff that's all kind of woven together. It's gender issues, race issues, our incarceration system, it's power, it's how trauma, like how that can be triggering for people when abusers are given power and visibility. It has to do with cultural issues, and all of this stuff weaves together. And I don't think that this conversation is particularly well suited for Twitter for a lot of different reasons.
Are there any conversations particularly well suited for Twitter? Like serious societal conversations? I don't think there are.
But like I think that if I were to say anything, I hope that people who are listening are also asking people that they're listening, that they're willing to have their mind change, and that I hope that they don't just latch on to the first thing they think and just stick with it and defend it until the end, because that's really frustrating. Again, when I see people who say it was so long ago or it doesn't matter, it makes my blood boil, and it's really
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And one of the little kind of nuanced points I want to make is that, because I saw some of this too, is no, I was not on board with the Jason Kidd thing, because like, as again, I'm going to keep referencing it, 58-minute mark of that pod a couple weeks ago with my initial thoughts on this. Like, as Ashtyn, you would reference, there is something to, like rehabilitation and kind of like showing a character growth or whatnot. Jason Kidd did none of that. None of that. Like, that man just flaunted all of his shit, right? He's like, I don't care, I'm better than this, whatever. That's the same kind of reason, like, Ben Roethlisberger kind of stuff, Tyreek Hill. Those are the kind of, I'm not going to forgive that. Those things are absolutely despicable. So I want the nuance and perspective, at least on this conversation, to be like, hey, just because you maybe don't have the same opinion as everybody else with this Chauncey Billups topic, please don't lump all those things into that same category. And maybe your thoughts and opinion on that stuff, Ashtyn?
Yeah, I think we should come at everything with a nuanced take, because things are never just black and white. And so that's hard to do on Twitter, I think, for a lot of people. But I think taking time to have conversations is really important. And like, I've been talking to some people in DMs today, because that's like a much more, thoughtful way to facilitate a conversation about this, because no one feels like they're being attacked, and they're like have to posture online or have to do any kind of, they can kind of be more true to what they feel, and it's easier to listen, I think. So I encourage people to do those kinds of things in the DMs, because I think that's just a better place to do it. That's what I've been doing today. But yeah, like we're saying, things aren't black and white, of course. I am a Chiefs fan. You mentioned Tyreek Hill. I'm a Chiefs fan, and I have to grapple with that oftentimes. I do not support Tyreek Hill. I do not cheer for Tyreek Hill. I sometimes hope he does not catch the ball. I sometimes wish he was not as fast as he was. And I will do the same now. I won't judge anyone who stays a fan or isn't a fan any longer, but there will also be something that I have to tell myself, is that there are also people in the organization that are good people. And I think it's okay to be excited for them. But I will personally not be super excited about the Chauncey hire when it officially goes through.
And real quick, we can kind of end this conversation on this note, and then take a quick break and then be right back, kind of close out this pod. But anybody who is now kind of inspired or is now reading up on these kind of things and whatnot. A very good charity that I recommend people go and check out. It's nwcave.org. That's the National Women's Coalition Against Violence and Exploitation. They do absolutely fantastic work, a lot of stuff with women's shelters, and helping people escape abusive relationships or provide legal services for those that find themselves in these kind of situations where they need a legal representation in order to get justice for themselves. So again, that's the nwcave.org. And also, if you're listening to this and are in an abusive relationship, whether you be man or woman, I very much recommend that you reach out to, your local domestic abuse hotline, a friend, and there's help out there if you need it. There's support, and especially in this area of the Pacific Northwest. But just kind of, unless anybody else has anything to say, we can bookmark this Billups discussion, take a quick break, and then come right back.
Sounds good.
All right. Okay, and we're back. So we're just gonna pivot here, and so the biggest kind of Blazer news before the topic that we just discussed has been that the 76ers absolutely flamed out in the playoffs, and Ben Simmons is worth 2 tacos in a plastic bag that you can carry him in, and that is obviously the best the best opportunity for the Blazers to jump on a CJ trade and make a move. I just kind of want your guys' initial reaction to for one, how you guys felt that Doc Rivers and freaking Joel Embiid handled that post 76ers press conference and just throwing Simmons under the bus, and for two, the absolute mastery of both Daryl Morey and I'm gonna assume Neil O'Shea leaking things about trying to up the value of both Simmons and CJ to try to leverage a possible deal per se.
What was the
Ashtyn?
What did Neil O'Shea leak for CJ's sake?
Well, so it's there's been a couple reports over the last day and a half or so that saying that CJ has been told that he won't be moved, which to me strikes me as posturing from the organization of trying to make him seem less attainable, so that it becomes less of a Blazers trading a CJ plus something for Simmons and more of the 76ers trading Simmons plus something for CJ. It's kind of the weird media posturing that I'm seeing going on with those kind of things.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, that would make sense. I know that Neil's been pretty anti getting rid of CJ for such a long time, too, that it's well, maybe he's just telling the truth. But yeah, that is interesting. I think everyone's being a little too brutal to Ben Simmons, but that's just my, sensitive my sensitive soul coming into it. I think we're in
do you have a team mom kind of protective vibes?
Not really. I just it's really the way that we treat people really weighs on me. So I just feel because they're athletes, we think we can comment and say whatever we want, and they're still people and they still see those things, and it's funny to joke about those kinds of things, and I certainly do. But man, the Twitter was a brutal place to be that night and then the next day. And then also Ben Simmons had to deal with Twitter and then also had to deal with Doc Rivers not supporting him either. And it's man, I bet it would just be horrible. I worry about his mental health, due to that. I would feel absolute garbage after that. But
and especially when it just appears to also be a mental issue and not necessarily a skill or talent issue.
Yeah.
Let's mindfuck the guy who's already mindfucked.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. I hadn't even really thought about that, but you're right. Yeah, it's a tough thing. It's a weird thing. It's I don't know. Would you guys be interested in a trade involving those two?
In a heartbeat. In a freaking heartbeat.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because there's a balance between what they call adjusting your priors, which is whatever opinion you have, letting new information change that opinion. A balance between
that's not allowed. Not allowed.
It has to be allowed. There's a balance between doing that and then being a prisoner of the moment and kind of oversampling the most recent sample. I feel like that's what's happening with Ben Simmons. Like, he had this not great playoff series, and now all of a sudden his value is just so low. Like, if you had told me like a couple months ago that we could potentially trade CJ for Ben Simmons, I'd be like, no way. Like
2 weeks ago, you would have done that.
Right. And I think that, like, so for me, yeah, like, I would definitely do that deal. I get that it wouldn't be the cleanest fit because Ben Simmons is not a great shooter, but if you imagine Yusuf Nurkic taking more threes, maybe facilitating from the elbow more, then you have Dame can shoot if you re-sign Powell, and then you have Robert Covington out there as a threat. I think that could really work. And I mean, the biggest thing for me is the ceiling of Damian Lillard as CJ McCollum as your two best players. I just don't think it's very difficult for me to see that core being a title contending team. So when something like a trade for Ben Simmons is floated, I am super on board with that personally.
I have years and years of tape on the Dame and CJ experience. I have zero tape on the Dame and Simmons experience. And at this point in time, make the swing. And if it doesn't clear the fence, oh, well, at least you effing tried. One of the big things for me is that a lot of people are trying to make the correlation of that Ben Simmons can't, he needs to, quote unquote, be the big. And so you're seeing a lot of stuff lately that's, you got to trade Nurk if you're going to bring in Simmons or whatnot. Last I checked, Joel Embiid gets about 30 touches a game. Nurk, 12 to 14. I don't think that, I think Nurk can play a kind of a weak side role or kind of like this second option if you're going to run a pick and roll with Dame and Simmons, or even, both Nurk and Simmons, like showing for a screen, one popping out, one, there's threats all over. I think I've always maintained that the roster needs a form of balance. And I think that a Simmons CJ trade offers balance, and I'm even going to go as far as to say that that's without signing Norman Powell. But that also depends solely on how you feel about Anthony Simons and if he could possibly step up into the two guard spot. Oh, you're shaking your head. Are you anti-Ant?
Of course not. So I'm not anti anyone on the Blazers. I'm not anti CJ. I love CJ as well. I just don't think Ant is the answer that Neil O'Shea thinks he is. But,
he's also not that point guard that Neil O'Shea thinks he is.
Yeah, that's true. I think above anything else, the Blazers have always found a way to at least make the playoffs interesting, or at least like overcome whatever expectations were set out for them. This year felt completely different and flat. And it felt like the one thing that we always have, whether we have defense or not, whether we have shooters or not, is we have heart. And it felt like we didn't even have that this year. And that's like, what do we have if not heart, right?
Yeah.
It almost feels like any kind of change.
Dame just now.
Yeah. It feels like any kind of change, not any kind of change, but a change, possibly CJ for Ben Simmons, could be a positive thing because we got to shake things up.
To your point about overachieving, my understanding is the Blazers have overachieved their Vegas odds almost every single year of the Damian Lillard era.
Right.
And by the way, I think
only 1 year they have not.
Yeah. By the way, I think part of that credit goes to Coach Stotts, who is no longer the coach. Mm-hmm. But I think what that says...
Hold on, real quick aside. Super sad. We all thought he was getting the Pacers job, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
It does suck.
Neil, hire him.
He'll get something. But I do think that because of that, to your point, Ashtyn, about the Blazers overachieving, I think because of that, I think that it is more likely than not that we have seen the ceiling of what a Dame and CJ combination can achieve. In my view, in order for the team to be better with those two as your best players, you need the absolute perfect pieces around them, and that just doesn't seem likely.
Rocco is a great team defender. What this team is missing is an absolute on-ball stopper. Yeah. I could give 3 flying Fs about the offense. I think it operates efficiently enough. I think Dame is enough of a threat. Rocco's a good, second or third option. If Norman Powell comes back, then I am perfectly fine if you want to put Ben Simmons in. And then you have Nurk as kind of like this pivot point anchor of a defense. Rocco as probably one of the league's best help defenders, and Ben Simmons, who has been, second just this year in Defensive Player of the Year as a great on-ball defender. If you're gonna basically give me an Al-Farouq Aminu again, that is on a all-star level playing field, I'll take it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we might benefit from having someone who doesn't want to shoot as much. Like we have so many.
So you're on my anti-Carmelo train? Yes.
No, I'm not anti anyone. I said that. But yeah, we just have too many people that want to shoot the ball, and it's just like we just need some. I don't want to call them selfish players because they're not. I genuinely don't think they're being selfish, but they just love shooting and they just don't stop. And Ben Simmons maybe would fix that problem.
Don't stop. Get it.
Let me ask, Ashtyn, how do you feel like the other two potential CJ trade targets that have come up as being possibly good fits? One of them is Tobias Harris, also the 76ers. And then the other one seems a little less likely now because the Bucks are doing better, but Chris Middleton.
Middleton's off the table. We can just that would have been the
I was hoping
Middleton's the wet dream
because I was like, man,
me too.
We could get Chris Middleton, but that maybe is not realistic anymore. But for a moment, it really felt like it was, and that I think would have been wonderful. I don't know about Tobias Harris. I don't know. I mean, I like I said, at this point, it's kind of like you might as well try something, but. I don't know. I'd be more excited about a Ben Simmons trade, I think, personally.
Me
but
too.
I don't know.
And no, I think that's fair. And for me, I have abandoned the hope that you can get equal talent value for CJ McCollum because of his age, because of his contract.
Ship sailed 2 years ago.
And so for me, it is just about prioritizing the fit around what are Damian Lillard's skills and weaknesses and making it possible, for the other three players besides Dame and whoever else that second player would be, make it easier to fit those other three players around him. I just have to tell you, though, I don't think Olshey is going to trade CJ. I don't think CJ will be traded as long as Olshey is a GM.
Ooh,
I agree with that.
I am willing to bet you both. Ashtyn, I will mail you a bottle of wine of your choice, and Goldner, I will buy you a 6-pack. This is how confident I am in this. CJ will not be on the roster come day one next year.
Really?
Anybody want to take an air shake on this?
I'll take an air shake. I'll take a 6-pack of White Claw.
I'll take a 6-pack of Widmer half from both of you.
Okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
I just don't see it. Look, my thing is Olshey, he came into the Damian Lillard draft with the Blazers already having done a ton of scout work on Dame. I don't think Damian Lillard was fully Olshey's pick.
Chad Buchanan just gets thrown under the bus for that.
Yeah, Chad Buchanan was the head of scouting before that draft. He was the interim GM during the draft. He was the head of scouting after that draft. That was clearly that work had already been done.
And by the way, Myers Leonard, also Chad Buchanan. But
CJ is Olshey's guy. I mean, that's the person that Olshey picked that he can say that was really, that was all me and probably partially Paul Allen. I don't see him trading CJ. I just don't.
Yeah, I agree. And I think more than anything, it's every single season we think there's going to be a huge change, and every single season there's not. So I'm just tempering.
Delusions of grandeur.
Yeah. And I don't, honestly, if CJ stays, I'm okay with that too, because I love him as a person, but I do agree that I think we've seen the ceiling. But yeah, I don't think a major change will be made there.
My son's favorite player, in fact, I still have it as my pinned tweet on my personal Twitter of @TheWittyRyan, is I was trying to prove There we go. I was trying to prove to my son that you just can't get tickets, because he was like, "Oh, well, Dad, you do a Blazers podcast, so obviously you know all the Blazers players."
Yeah.
And I was like, "No, dude." And he's like, "Oh, well, I'm sure like you could just get on Twitter and get tickets." And this was coming up on my birthday 2 years ago or whatnot. And so I threw out a tweet the day before my birthday of like, "Hey, if Dame and CJ read this, anybody want to hook a father up with some tickets for him and his son for his birthday tomorrow?" Mm-hmm. CJ responded immediately, and he's like, "Dude, I got you. Give me the names. DM them to me." And so we actually got the family pass section from CJ, and then CJ on Twitter reached out to us. He's like, "Hey guys, don't leave. I'm gonna hang with you guys after the game." And so I have a picture of my son with his face painted in Blazers gear, CJ's arm around him at half court at Moda after that game. And CJ hung out and talked with us for like 20-30 minutes or whatnot. And so my son's favorite player is CJ. And so like he I don't allow him to have like social media or anything, but like he heard something on the radio when we were driving the other day. He's like, "They want to trade CJ?"
Oh.
I'm a Raptors fan because dinosaurs are well, he didn't say fucking, but dinosaurs are awesome. But that was how I heard it in my head, and I was like, he's still on the team. He's like, they get rid of CJ. I'm a fan of whatever team CJ goes to, or the Raptors.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I feel that. I love players. So when players go, I mean, we lost Gary Trent, it was like my heart is gone. When
that was my son's second favorite player, Gary Trent.
Yeah.
I think it's important too. It's like the reason why a lot of people like me would like to see CJ traded for someone else. It's because he's a really good basketball player and that he has trade value, right? Like, and I think it's also important, like when we're talking about this stuff, like CJ responded to someone's tweet a couple days ago. It was actually
consummate professional.
It was actually David McKay, who used to be long ago was actually my editor at Rip City Project, and then was at Blazers Edge when I was there. And so players read that stuff, right? Like they read the trade packages around. So I would just say, like, as much as we are spitting out trade ideas, just be mindful that the players read it and like just be a human about it. Like, don't be a jerk. I think that's probably pretty good rule for all things.
Yes, yeah, that's a good rule to just kind of live by. But yeah, I know that is a big part of it too, because it's like their whole life is uprooted, you know, when they have to go somewhere else, and that's a huge change. And who knows if they want? I mean, you know, they also know that they're not dumb. They know that that's part of it. But yeah, being sensitive about that kind of stuff is important to me too, because it's like, you know, we're all just trying to survive.
Yeah.
On that note, let's wrap this up. Ashtyn, let us know where we can find you, Flagrant Mag, all that fun stuff, and then Brandon, take us out of here.
You can find Flagrant Mag at Flagrant Mag on Twitter and on Instagram. And you can purchase Flagrant Mag at flagrantmag.com. I'm at Lil_Butts on Twitter, but that's less important. And that's that.
Rad. Thanks, Ashtyn. Appreciate having you. If you want to find us, it's at Like the Blazers on Twitter, WeLikeTheBlazers.com, or on any podcatcher. Check us out. Check out the Flagrant Pod and Flagrant Magazine. And to all of you, thank you for listening, and go Blazers.
Go Ducks.
What?
Oh.
The hell? Get out of here.
No. Yucky.
Yeah, no.
Don't do that.
Boo. As someone who grew up in Corvallis, went to Oregon State. How dare you?
I immediately hit stop recording as soon as I hit go touch.
Oh no, this is going in. I'm still recording Skype and I am putting this in there. So yeah that's what you get.
Yeah, leave us in saying ew.
Yeah, that's how it's gonna end.